Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Dr. Colin Zhu, and thank you so much for being here with us. This is the Thrive Bites podcast, and welcome to season 5. Here we talk about 3 things: plant-powered living, enhancing emotional resilience, and creating a thriving mindset. And I interview the most passionate guests here, ranging from physicians to coaches to dietitians to entrepreneurs. And my hope is to give you really informative and high-valued conversations. So please follow us here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and wherever you hear your podcasts. Come on in, and I can't wait to see you inside. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Thrive Bites Podcasts. This is a very special episode. I am joined by my friends and colleagues, and we are talking about growing up Asian. And I've always wanted to have this type of conversation and talk amongst my friends and peers, and I've had it, growing up sporadically. And the reason why we're also on this topic is because it is in the month of May, and from May 1st to May 31st, we are celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, AAPI Heritage Month. And basically it's a celebration and recognizing the historical and cultural contributions of our individuals and groups within the AAPI descent within the United States. And, according to the Pew Research Center, we make up about 7% of the total U.S. population. And as of 2019, 22.9 million people within Asian and Pacific Islander descent live in the United States. And it is typically celebrated from May 1st to May 31st. And, it is also Mental Health Awareness Month. And so, there's just not enough, talk about, and this is what we do here at Thrive Bites, is continuing that conversation of enhancing emotional resilience. Specifically from an Asian perspective, a lot of us, it's very taboo to share different topics and talks about mental health, whether we're anxious, depressed, whether we're holding something in. A lot of times it's very suppressed and repressed, over time, and that manifests to many, many different things. And so I share a lot of we share a lot of childhood anecdotes to what we, grew up in our household, the different snacks and foods that we ate, to parenthood and, what our parents, instilled in us, what we liked, what we didn't like, to our current, times and era of Asian hate, and Asian violence, anti-Asian hate and violence within our country currently. So we talk about all these different things. So it's a great episode. Definitely tune in, and can't wait to see you inside. Okay, guys. Well, welcome to another episode of Thrive Bites Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Colin Zhu, and thank you so much for being here with us. You could have been anywhere in the world, and you decided to share your precious moments with us today, and we are greatly, greatly appreciative. So, for today, we have a wonderful, wonderful episode. It is called Growing Up Asian, and it's a very personal, poignant. We're going to have a lot of laughs. I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, and we're super, super excited for today's episode. And this is for celebration of AAPI month in the month of May, or Asian American Pacific Islanders month in celebration, as well as Mental Health Awareness Month. And it is great that they are actually coinciding with one another. And we have lots to talk about. So without further ado, please welcome all my friends and colleagues. Hey, say hello. So one by one, we're just going to go down. We're going to go kind of Brady Bunch style. And I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us where you're calling from. And just like one line describing, summarizing yourself. So Connie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Connie. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a practicing dentist in Freehold, New Jersey. And I've known Colin since I guess, since we were in 6th grade.
All right. Jasmine, you go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Jasmine Sardana. I'm an internal medicine physician, primary care physician, and a lifestyle medicine physician. I'm calling in from Maryland, and my family's background is South Asian and specifically South Indian. We hail from the state of Kerala in India, and really excited to be here today.
All right. Gina, you're next.
Hey everyone, my name is Gina Sue. I'm an actress and film producer. I started Pretty Magic Productions, which aims to have more women and people of color in front and behind the camera in film. And I'm a fellow vegan, and that's how I met Colin. I am an ABC, American-born Chinese, and I'm calling in from Los Angeles.
Jason, my man, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Jason. I have nothing really accomplished. I'm just a restaurant dude that I met Colin at a restaurant. Met him a few years back. He's a lot nicer than he looks, so I realized, being his friend was nice. So we became friends, and yeah, he kept in touch, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing really more about me. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm probably moving to Arizona soon. I'm originally from Hawaii, though.
And you're also Japanese descent. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Excellent.
So I think.
And so you do like Ancestry or 23andMe, right?
Yeah.
And then you're introduced with this, like, what is this 8% of Ethiopian or whatever?
Yeah. I could be anything. I don't know. But so far, that's how I was raised.
Connie, you're Vietnamese descent, right?
Yes. Sorry, I forgot to mention I am from Vietnam.
All right. Awesome. Rashmi, go ahead.
Hi, I'm so grateful to be here. This is such an amazing group of people. Thank you for putting this together, Colin. So my name is Rashmi Shram. I'm a family physician. I am also an integrative health coach. I'm a meditation teacher as well. I am the founder of Optimal Wellness, and this is where we help busy women to ditch guilt and tap into inner peace and power so they can live more energetic and purposeful lives. I am actually originally from India as well, just like Jasmine, and in fact, from South India, from a city called Bangalore, and I was born there, and I lived there until I was almost 12. And so I'm actually calling in from Northeast Florida, which is where I practice now.
Awesome. And my friend Rex, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Rex Guido. I'm a sports medicine physician in Ithaca, New York. I know Colin from undergrad, and he actually helped me a little bit on my journey to get into medical school, so I've always appreciated him for that. I'm of Filipino descent, and I'm very excited to be here with all of you.
All right. Awesome. And for those that, are new to this space, I'm a first generation Chinese American immigrant child. Born and raised in New Jersey and currently in Southern California. So I would like to open up the floor. This episode is really about celebrating the diaspora of our Asian heritage. And I wanted to do something special, something personal, something unique. Obviously, we are celebrating AAPI. And we are, just wanting to ask those questions of what was it like growing up? What was it like growing up in our household? What was your family like? Our parents? Some of us might have grown with other Asian friends as well. Some of us haven't. And personally, for me, I've always had this, in a way, identity crisis in terms of, which way do I go? And when I went back to China, I felt like I was too American, too quote unquote white. And if I was, living here in the United States, I just felt, too much of an outsider, too foreign. So I've always had these questions, for myself. And I just felt that, maybe someone else, are feeling the same way. And I think there's a lot of power in terms of not just storytelling, but also shared experiences and having those experiences being shared across the table, so we could relate to one another better. So this is the premise of the episode. So my first question, I would like to pose to the group is, what was your favorite TV show or snack or meal growing up in an Asian household? And just raise your hand for those that want to go first.
Okay, I'll go. So I remember in the summers when I would hang out with my cousins, we'd eat literally like ramen, this bag of ramen we would eat it dry. We wouldn't even cook it because it was like, it had like chili, and it was almost like, but we were eating it like it was like a bag of potato chips, but we would devour this bag. And now as an adult, I'm like, oh man, I remember I used to eat this, and I read the nutrition label, and it was like something astronomical, like 1,800 milligrams of sodium, like something that you shouldn't even exceed on a daily basis. And we were just like chewing it down.
Do you remember the name of the ramen?
I think it started with an M. It was like MOMA or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall, but if I saw the bag, it was like a aluminum foil looking bag. Yeah, I mean, that was our potato chips, right?
Yeah. I just came across a post by a fellow colleague, and I don't know, for those of you that grew up, loving cup of noodles, or I forget what was the other company that produces instant ramen noodles, Maruchan or something like that. I've always had an issue with their various flavors, but one in particular I had a problem was Oriental flavor, right? And I said to myself, is there a brother in there? Like, are there rugs in there? I was like, what is this? Does anyone else have like something, quirky like that within their snacks and meals growing up within their cultures?
So I can share something interesting. So being South Indian, being Indian, period, chai is such a huge part of our culture. I think what's really special also about chai, and I think speaks to the diversity within India, is that chai is prepared in all these different ways, depending on wherever you go. There's, a unique blend of spices that go into chai from North India versus, some of the states in North India versus maybe South India, where I'm from. And so it's really kind of representative of really the uniqueness and the diversity within India itself. So chai was something that was a staple in our home every, multiple times a week, if not every single day. And not that I drank chai as a child, but I saw all of my elders drinking chai for breakfast, lunch, dinner, after dinner, for a snack. When we had guests come over, chai was almost ritualistic, right? When someone comes into your home, the first thing that you offer them and ask them is, would you like some chai? And so that was something that was ingrained in me. And it's now that I have 3 young kids, we make it in our home, and I've introduced it to my kids, and it's been one of those special, and I've introduced the unique blend of the spices that my mom makes and that I've kind of tweaked around a little bit. And although I'm not giving my kids like cups of chai, I let them enjoy it with something called rusk, which is this type of an Indian biscotti, I think might be the best way to describe it, that we eat with the chai. And my kids love it. And it's really just been such a special thing to see as a mom now here at this end. That's something that I didn't really think about that much, was so powerful and was so representative of the things that I really enjoy and of my culture. And I'm able to pass that on to my kids. So chai is something that's been a really significant, important, but it was just one of those like little things that you don't notice, but you don't realize until you're older and you're the mom, how big of an impact that small, meal or that small drink has.
Right. I recall from, I went to a wedding. Connie and I have a mutual friend growing up, and he had a wedding in Jaipur in Rajasthan. And I remember the tradition of going to every household and being served chai. I've always been peculiar or just curious on, how is it traditionally served, and then how much, like a lot of trends in America, how we've messed it up.
Well, we could talk for a long time. First of all, it's not chai tea. Let's just start there. It's just chai. Tea is really just it's just a repetitive. Chai means tea, so you don't really need to say chai tea. It's just chai. That's what it is. So that's number one. There, and when I say traditional, as I mentioned before, every single state, every single household really has their own unique blend of the spices. But I can run down the common spices that are usually in a masala chai. And I should start off by saying chai is just black tea with cream or milk added to it. We're a plant-based family, so we use oat milk, and it took a little bit of convincing my parents that it's still as good as the original with dairy milk, but it's great. But the usual masalas that we use or spices that we use are cardamom, cloves, ginger, and specifically dried ginger. My mom particularly likes dried ginger, which is a little bit more potent. But you can add all sorts of other spices. I've seen
cinnamon. Cinnamon's in there a lot.
Turmeric.
Right?
I've seen cinnamon. Yes. I've seen black pepper in chai as well. And I'm sure Rashmi could probably add to that. And there's probably a different, blend that maybe she's more familiar with. But yeah.
Chai is such a big deal, but one thing that I wanted to talk about when you said how do we do it in the US is the quantity. Oh my goodness. Right, in India it's like maybe an ounce and a half, maybe 2 ounces, because it's more of a ritual and a ceremony, like Jasmine was saying. But like here it's like this 22-ounce behemoth, and we've really just like taken it way overboard.
Well, that's America for you, right? Gina, Jason, or Rex, any favorite snacks that stuck out in your mind growing up?
So my mom would bake purple yams or purple potato or Okinawan sweet potato and let me bring it to school, and all my friends would be like, "What are you eating? Why is it purple?" And I know now that it's so nutritious and good for you, but back then it was like, I realized most of American food is just like brown or beige, like bread, pasta, mashed potatoes. And then me bringing in something purple was like, why is it so colorful? But it was so tasty. And I was like so grateful to be fed good food when I was younger, even though my friends probably thought it was really weird and strange. But maybe Jason might have a different opinion because they eat a lot of that in Hawaii, which is a place I love.
Jason?
The funny story with that was when I was a little kid, even though I was, raised in Hawaii, and a lot of kids are half Asian or just a bunch of Asian people, period. When I used to take lunch to school, my mom would make me these musubis, which is rice balls. And because it's Hawaii, she would make me some spam musubis, or a lot of times she would make this salmon musubi, which would be dried salmon, and it would just be mixed up with rice and made into a rice ball, seasoned, and then wrapped with seaweed, nori. And I would bring it to school, and everybody would be like, "Well, I got Lunchables. Well, I got a peanut butter and jelly sandwich." And I'm like, "Well, I got this." They're like, "What the hell is that?" I'm like, it's a musubi. And so I would be eating it. I'm like, man, I want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or I want a ham and cheese sandwich. So every once in a while, I would ask my parents or my mom to make me one of those. And then later on, I grow up and I'm like, man, I was spoiled, because those peanut butter jelly sandwiches and ham and cheese, they're nothing compared to these musubis or whatever my mom used to make me. And she would make me from scratch once in a while, like a full plate with rice, some kind of salmon protein, or, and a pickled vegetable. And at that time, I would prefer something that everybody else had. But it's Now I'm like, that's all I want to eat. I don't want to eat a peanut butter jelly sandwich, you know?
Right.
And so it's a different way of growing up and seeing food, because
Yeah.
and back to the whole, when you were talking about chai and all those seasonings, I don't think I even knew what cloves, turmeric, or any of those seasonings were until I grew up, well, later in life, because my parents cooked a lot of just traditional Japanese food, and none of those spices were used. I had none of that in our cabinets. It was just salt, pepper, soy sauce, and maybe a couple of random things. It's surprising, but I didn't even know what paprika was until I was like 20.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I love how, like, we can, come together and just, that's the beauty of it, to be able to, share these things. So the next question I would love to ask is, we all live, the one thing we have in common, in addition to many other things, is that we all live in the United States of America. And I want to ask the question to, the floor is, can you share one story that you experience, one moment, one experience growing up where you felt that, you were different, you were made to kind of feel a little bit, different, whether it's, quote unquote, foreign, an outsider, but just made to feel a little bit ostracized, a little bit, or made, or share a story of saying like, oh, I am American, but I'm also Asian, at the same time. Would anyone like to share a story? Rex, go ahead.
It's interesting because this will actually fall into the whole food story. But when I was in middle school, my mom would let me, would pack my lunch similar to everybody else, but there would be a lot of rice in it. So it'd be like rice with some meat. And just like Jason would say, like everybody else would have Lunchables or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And there came a point wherein, everybody would question why I was bringing rice every day to school. And, when you're new and you look different and you're essentially the 1% Asian population of your school, actually 2%, me and my sister, you really there's such a pressure to want to fit in. So there was one time where I actually didn't eat my lunch. I hid it and I ended up throwing it away at home. And my mom found out and she was just like, why did you, why are you wasting food? Why did you throw this away? And I essentially said it's because, I don't want to bring lunch. I don't want to bring rice to school because nobody else brings rice to school. And in a sense, I was embarrassed to, bring my traditional foods, and I wanted to fit in with everybody else. So that was a sort of memorable experience for me because I realized that, I wanted so much to fit in that I was essentially throwing away a big part of who I was culturally. It wasn't until, admittedly, I was sort of misled my mother into thinking I was finishing my food, but there was a guy on the bus and he'd be like, dude, I'll eat that. What is that, egg foo young? And I'm like, dude, you want to finish my food? I'll give it to you. I'll save it every day. And he would finish my lunch for me. God bless you, Damien, wherever you are. But then it wasn't until I saw that he actually appreciated the food of my culture that I was like, why am I trying so hard to fit in? If people really like me, they should like me for who I am. So that essentially was a turning point for me later on, where I just started to accept my culture as what it was.
Thanks, Rex. I appreciate it. I didn't even know about that story. So, and it does come to a point where I don't know if everyone else feels similarly, but I've had similar times where I didn't want to in order to fit in, I had to, in a way, try to look like everyone else, kind of like high school is a really good example where, you see all these popular kids and what they're wearing or how they carry themselves. And, you just want to fit in. And, irregardless of the cultural background, it's more of a, individual sense as well. And, and it's, I remember those feelings. So I can definitely, relate to what you're saying in terms of, at times you have to discard a part of yourself. For you, it's food, representative of your culture, and that could be hard. And reflecting back, if we could take like a DeLorean back, and say like, just stand up and be proud, and be appreciative of, the different facets of who we are. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
I just need to chime in, Rex, because I thought that was so incredibly powerful what you said, that you didn't necessarily appreciate how good the food was and your culture as a result until someone else outside of your culture ate that food and was like, wait, this is actually bomb. This tastes so good. And you're like, wait a minute, maybe it is really good. And, sometimes I feel like I've had that experience maybe multiple times where I was trying to distance myself from certain things, right? Certain clothing or wearing a bindi or, other things that could really mark you as different, and wanting to distance myself. And then as I got older and I started noticing other, groups, the majority kind of appropriating some of those things, then I was like, oh, wait, no, that's mine. Right. So that was really great. Thank you for sharing that.
Going off of appropriating, what is one thing, item, clothing, trend currently right now that other groups are appropriating that, you have an issue with? Rashmi?
I'm going to answer this question, but I did have another story too. I'll tell you guys later on. But the story actually was just that I immigrated at the age of 12. So I wasn't born here. I was very, very Indian when I came to the U.S. And and the only thing I knew about the United States was from a Sears catalog. I literally thought the United States was a Sears catalog because I had an auntie who lived in the U.S. who would bring us a Sears catalog, and I would study it because I was like, oh, we're going to move there. I got to read the whole thing. And obviously the U.S. is nothing like that. And we landed in a very small coal mining town that was run by the KKK, and it still is, in southwestern Virginia. And it was a very, very interesting experience, to say the least. Most people actually, when I was, on the bus, I was in 6th grade. I was getting on the bus to finish out the school year, and because I didn't even understand the lingo, the linguistics, I was placed in some remedial classes for 6th grade. But the kids there would be like, "You're from Indiana? That's real far." And so that was a real quick learning experience. But let me skip to the appropriation part. I think, I love that you brought this up, Jasmine, because I think the line between appreciation and appropriation is actually quite thick. It's not a thin line, and I think we see a lot of our culture being appropriated. To me, it's yoga, it's meditation. They have really hijacked what yoga is. Yoga is not just asanas. It is not, an exercise. It is not a let's wear the tightest clothing we can and pose over a waterfall for IG. Yoga is a way of living. Yoga is meditation. Yoga is union of mind, body, spirit with the environment. And to really appropriate that, or to use the symbol for Om without understanding the cultural significance. We see this over and over and over again. And in fact, I actually got an IG message not long ago that was from a yoga teacher somewhere who was like kind of telling me to stay in my lane as a physician, which was hilarious. Meaning, because I was talking, I'm a certified meditation teacher. I practice yoga. I have my whole life, and so I very kindly had some words exchanged, and because I have a lot of feelings about that, but it wasn't a disrespectful conversation. I didn't feel like, and I think some people really don't understand when they are appropriating. Like I'll see like a Ganesh in a place where it shouldn't be. I see an Om sign where it shouldn't be, but really it's the yoga, it's the meditation bit that I think is definitely being appropriated. What do you think, Jeswell?
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree with you there. I think, shy, just kind of that piece of it, there's so many things that are part of our culture that have kind of been woven into the American fabric that it's no longer celebrated and honored, or the origin of where those things came from is no longer honored. It's forgotten, and almost purposely. And that's where I take issue, right? There is definitely a thick line. I love how you said that. There's definitely a thick line between appreciation and appropriation. And yoga absolutely comes to mind as one of those things. Food in general, when it comes to Indian foods, that's something that I see too, where, of course I want to share my culture. Of course I want to share my traditions. But when I see, blog posters or even restaurants, offer or serve meals that are Indian and, in the description have no understanding of kind of what the spices are, or using the term curry powder. That's one of my pet peeves is, there's a lot of curry powder in this. There's no such thing as curry powder in India. We don't use curry powder. No offense or no, disrespect to curry powder. I, think that's great. But I think if you don't really understand the culture, and appreciate the culture, then it's difficult to appreciate the foods that you're serving. It's difficult for you to have a full appreciation of that food.
Yeah. So so this is a very good question that I want to open up to the floor, is that how, this is a great topic. And I had this conversation with my sister. How do people that are not in that ethnic group be able to show respect and appreciate said, thing? It could be yoga, it could be an article of clothing, it could be a cultural historical piece. How does someone appreciate and respect that, and in a way, not appropriate, and being able to kind of give back, to that culture? It might be kind of a twofold question, but what would you say would be the best way to, do this, Rashmi?
One way I think is just to actually learn about the culture, right? Most people who are going through 200 yoga hour teachers, I think it's great that they have that initiative and that interest, but a lot of the programs just don't cover the, 8 limbs of yoga. And so taking it upon themselves to have the understanding of this is mind, body, spirit. This isn't just the poses. I think just understanding the culture is important there. And I think understanding that if there is like a Ganesh or an Om symbol, to at least have some level of respect for that. This isn't someone's religion. This isn't someone's culture. And I understand that Ganesh is the remover of obstacles. And so in here, let me see how it's used in that culture so that I don't misuse it, so that I don't, run it over to the beach and put it on the beach and take a photo of it for my IG live or whatever it is, right? So I think just studying it and respecting it goes a long way.
It's a great topic and we can spend forever. Jason?
So I have this different perspective on all this. First off, I grew up with my dad always telling me, look, it's normal to them. It's normal to them to do this or say this. And I grew up looking at different perspectives, whether it was a different race, culture, whatever it was. So I don't know if this is going to offend anybody, but I grew up I don't know what my experience of this and how I turned this way, but I grew up laughing at things and making jokes at things. And And for me, whether it's race, food, or whatnot, I think everybody gives it their own respect the way they do. It's just not everybody would respect it the way they do it. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, for example, if somebody would tell me, hey, if it comes with Indian food, the curry powder thing, and somebody would say that, and they would say how they're cooking traditional Indian food, and I use this curry powder, and an Indian person would be like, hey, that's not traditional. We don't use curry powder, but it's not disrespectful because that's what they know and that's how they respect it. So for me, I don't think there's any perfect way to somehow respect a certain culture or a certain kind of food or whatever it is by doing research or whatever. It's how you present and how you personally feel about it. People that do get offended by how other people present it, it has a lot of insecurities on them and their past, I think. So, for example, if somebody were to say anything about Japanese culture, Japanese food, and they're like, yeah, this is Japanese food and this, I learned not to be disrespected by that because that's just how they represent it. And they're not purposefully disrespecting it. That's just all they know. And, ignorance is a bliss too. And on top of that, it's just, there's nothing you can do. Not everybody's 100% educated with everything and anything in the world. So I started to accept things on how it's presented. This goes with even racist jokes or whatnot. It just has to do with the intention of it. It's if there's anything that has to do with disrespecting, then I think it's disrespectful, of course. But if they're just not intentionally doing it on purpose, I think it's perfectly fine. It's just you can just be the better person, just be like, hey, just to let you know, traditionally, you're not supposed to do it like this. But for me, it's just something that I don't think should be taken so serious.
No, I like that perspective. And I don't know that why I would have come across as having taken it seriously, right? And so if I had taken all of the appropriation seriously, I wouldn't even be having this conversation. If I was offended every time someone blew up one of my gods on their IG live or their IG feed, I wouldn't even be on Instagram, right? And so it isn't really about taking offense. I would not say that I'm taking offense because that does sound like someone who doesn't quite have their grounding, right? And so I'm absolutely grounded. I understand boundaries, but if there's something sacred in someone's culture and it is being taken and used out of context, that is appropriation, and that does need to be corrected. And that is different than taking offense to certain jokes and whatnot, right? Because listen, I grew up in a town. I literally went to middle school and high school in a town that is still run by the Ku Klux Klan. And so if I had been taking offense, I wouldn't even have gone to college. I wouldn't have gone to medical school. I wouldn't have had, I wouldn't have done any of those things, right? And so, yeah, of course, there's a sense of resilience that comes from that. But also the question is, what are we taking out of certain cultures that are sacred to those cultures and making it into a joke? And that is appropriation.
Let's move on to the next question. It's a very, very good topic, but I want to be able to fit in all the good stuff that we have. So I'm sure this is everyone's favorite, going back to childhood and child rearing, parenthood. Name one behavior /trait /habit that your parent or parents or guardians try to instill in you that you found beneficial and or that you did not find beneficial to you. Why or why not? Rex raised his hand really quick. Rex, go ahead.
I think this is universal, but before, once you step into an Asian household, you better take your shoes off. So, people, and oftentimes in my parents' house, they will have a pair of flip-flops ready for you to sort of exchange, and I never understood what it was. I always thought it was just a form of cleanliness, on my mother's part. But looking into it, I realized that in certain cultures, like in our culture, you don't want to bring in, evil spirits. You don't want to bring in, negativity with you when you go into someone else's house. So it's definitely something that I continue even in going to other people's houses, and when they tell me, and I sort of explain that habit to them, it gives me an opportunity to sort of share the significance of why I'm doing that. And a lot of them, I think, accept that, and they take it on themselves to also do that sort of act when they come over. So that's definitely probably one of the biggest things that that my parents sort of instilled in me growing up, aside from other things. But that one to me feels the most memorable because I continue to do it even now, and then other people do it too.
I think the fun part of that, going off of that, being East Asian is, when you're dating someone that's not from your, background, and, doing that same exact thing, asking them to do the exact same thing, and they're not used to it. It's that, funny / awkward exchange of, well, this is kind of how, we do it. This is kind of how like our family does it. And you just do this dance of trying to figure out, they're just trying to figure out, okay, I guess I'll do it, because I'm going to someone's household, but not really understanding at the same time. And they just explain to me later, like, just explain to them like, hey, like my parents would just be upset. But yeah, I would love to hear what other people grew up with. Gina?
Mine might not be your very typical Asian upbringing, but my parents very much supported being creative and being in the arts. So I took art classes growing up, dance classes. I took a lot of sports classes as well, volleyball, tennis. They did try to get me to do some piano, which was probably my least favorite. And I really appreciate that, because when I got older, I realized one of the main reasons why they wanted to come to America is they love the collective group spirit, community spirit of Asia, but they were in awe and inspired by the individualist and creative and out of the box spirit of the US. And both my parents are entrepreneurs and business owners. So I really appreciated that has led me to pursue a career in acting, which I think has a far bigger impact on other people and how we represent our people and our culture than I ever thought before. I'm like, this is just a fun thing that I would love to do. So I'm so glad that they were open and able to take something from a different culture and raise their kid in this world where I, as an Asian American, get to be creative and work in a creative field as my job that pays me.
Yeah, definitely. Very, I'm not sure. For me, it was totally the opposite. Man, my father didn't care whether I did anything creatively or not. My father was like, you gotta study for that grade point average to get into a school that we all recognize and have heard of, so you can get said job. That was pretty much growing for me. Thankfully for my mother, she came from Hong Kong, a territory that was taken over by the British for 150 years. So she was a little bit more liberal in that sense. So she allowed me to just participate as many things as possible, and whatever I was happy with. So and I did a little bit of improv acting, so
Yeah.
hopefully I'll make Gina proud.
Maybe that's why my mom is also from Hong Kong.
Oh yeah. See,
Interesting.
There you go. Anyone else?
So I guess my childhood, I would describe, or the way my parents raised me, I don't want to use the word oppressive, but I probably had like two of Colin's dad. And so like the question is, how did it benefit me? How was it not beneficial? It's their philosophy was, you put your head down, you work, and you work until you're productive, and you get good grades, and you get into, you know, a professional school, and you get a professional job. And how it benefited me was that, yes, you know, I developed a very strong work ethic. You know, even still today, I always feel like I have to be productive. Now, when I say it's a double-edged sword, it's like you get to a point where I'm experiencing this later on in life, is that you're kind of like, you don't know how to relax, right? And you feel like you're compelled to be productive all the time. And that there's this sense of like, if you're not working and if you're not producing, then you're not worth anything, or you're not valuable. And that can be very detrimental. And I'm probably sure this is going to lead into your next question about mental health among Asian Americans. And Gina, it sounds like you had a very wholesome upbringing. I mean, I would love to have my parents had embraced, like, you know, my creative side for sure. I do remember telling my parents, because I think when I was young, I was very into fine arts and also performance arts. And their response was, you know, oh, sounds like it's going to be a good hobby for you in the future, right? And this is coming to light more recently, because, you know, I have 2 kids now, age 5 and 3. And so there's a lot of discussion about, like, you know, how do we want to, you know, me and my husband, how do we want to raise our kids? You know, like, how do we balance, like, yes, have them have that strong work ethic, that ambition, that grit, but also balance it with, like, you know, what makes you, what excites you, what gives you that creative outlet, right? And so that's been my perspective.
Go ahead, Rex.
You know, real quick, I think it's interesting to hear that we all sort of have like that similar background story. I don't want to say in defense of them, I guess. I mean, just like with what Jason was saying, like, that's what they know. That's what they have seen, you know, in their native countries, where it's like, okay, these are the types of successful people that, you know, are able to put food on the table and able to, you know, put a roof over their families' heads, you know. And I mean, I did acting when I was in high school, and I loved it. And when I got the drama award, I'll tell you, my parents were not excited. They were very upset because somebody else got, like, you know, 3 or 4 academic awards. And, you know, it was definitely something that I had to sort of put away and put aside as a realistic goal for me. But I will say that in my profession now, there are facets of acting or of just communication with patients that I take in, and in that way sort of provides me an outlet. But I guess I understand why the push was there for all of us, you know, especially coming from a different country. You know, there's this, you know, standard that we have to sort of meet with regards to, you know, do they deserve to be here? And if we don't sort of show that either intellectually, creatively, or through whatever skills that we bring to the table, it's easy for those, you know, so for those who are not Asian to continue to look down on us, you know. So I definitely understand, you know, where they came from. And could I have been an actor? Probably. I don't know. Maybe. That's why I'm doing Thrive Bites right now. This is my big break. But, you know,
I agree with you. You know, I think similarly, I'm sure, you know, you guys have similarities. Is, you know, they came through, you know, crossing the land, the seas, high waters, mountains, whatever have you, to provide, you know, a better life. And their version of a better life is what you just said, Rex. It's, you know, food on the table, roof over our heads. And in a way, and this was interesting because I've, you know, had to watch other, you know, Asian role models, you know, interviews and things like that. In a way, it's almost like the stuff that they put on us, that they instilled to their children, is almost like, this is a life that I would have pursued. right? This is the life that I would have gone through, if I was your age. So vicariously or indirectly, I want you to do this. So instead of saying like, this is what I would have pursued, they in a way are like, this is what you need to do, right? Without saying like, there's a separation of lives and individuality, right? Because a lot of outside of America, there's a lot of more what's the best word, homogeneous in terms of the culture, like more of a unified voice, as opposed to our 50 states and us being so individualistic. So does anyone else have something to share that was beneficial or not beneficial? Jason?
I think it was a generation thing on how parents raised everybody and how technology and how the world works and how everything advanced. And I think our generation, like, it was more of it was starting to become westernized, and our parents were still in their own worlds. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I feel like the work ethics and the mentality and mindset has completely changed. And so when it comes down to, because I work in a restaurant, and I just see the difference in the work ethic that I see in younger kids now. And I don't want to say it's lazy, it's just a different mindset. Everything is more working different. And I don't want to go in details because I'm probably just looking at this from my perspective in the restaurant, but I think it's just has to do with generations. And I believe, and it feels like for us, our generation, we're going to be more lenient to our kids because we were a little bit more strict, which I can't really say because I grew up as a really spoiled. I'm just speaking on behalf of a lot of stories that I know and I've heard of. So I don't know. It's just the world turns, and we'll see what happens in the next generation.
Thank you, Jason.
All right. Well, nice meeting you guys. I gotta go.
Who raised their hand before? You can just.
I think so. In my house, at least, there was just an implicitness to, hey, you probably need to have some safety around where your money is coming in, and it's nice if you can help people while you have that safety. And so, medical school, in so many ways, even though no one ever actually said you should be this or that to me, or even said you should work harder or more or anything like that. It's just I watched my parents work like crazy. They worked like minimum wage jobs, and they, my father was like basically he was a professor at a university before he ended up working these minimum wage jobs. And so just to watch that without really there being an explicit like there's got to be a better way. I mean, they did great afterwards. There was a decade of struggle, I would say, but it was an implicitness that I think my brother and I got as to, hey, they sacrificed a lot because they really believed that we could have a better life than what we would have had if they stayed in India. And so to me, I didn't really get I didn't get any pressure. And neither, I don't think my brother felt any of that pressure either, but we did, I think, put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And I see my kids doing that. I have teenagers. They're 15 and 17. In fact, what I really have to focus on in the last few years for them is to slow down, is to bring balance, is to really be rather than do. I don't know how many times I have to say to them, you're a human being, you're not a human doing. And so it's like, it is just the culture as well. Literally not just Asian. I mean, it's like the culture right now is they got to get into this college. They got to do this. Then they got to, and so, I think there's so much variance to this, and I love the heterogeneity in this group.
Gina?
I just wanted to mention something for all of the artists or younger artists who might eventually listen to this podcast, especially if you're Asian American, that a lot of my journey did include a lot of fighting for things that were creative. My parents definitely wanted me to go to a good school, get good grades. I was a very type A student, and I think I got this little exit avenue to go down a creative path was because maybe my personality had kind of checked all the Asian boxes. Not to say that is the only route, but my first dream was to be a backup dancer for Britney Spears, and that did not go over well with my parents at all. They're like, couldn't you pick someone else who like wore more clothes or something? But beyond that, it was just the idea of like, you can't make money as a dancer or as an artist. Your body's going to fall apart. How are you going to get food on your table, you know? So I think it was because I stuck to it so much and it was something I loved. Also have to give them credit for the fact that they allowed me to have something creative to fuel the rest of my academics. When I went to college, I snuck in a dance minor of the African diaspora. And it was really hard for me to tell my mom that on top of my major, I added in a minor and it was dance. And I think over the years, because there was so much back and forth about me constantly wanting to do something creative, that when I did eventually transition into acting, after I gave up a career in actually a private life coaching practice, that they were like, wow, she's really not giving this up. And she's old now. So we might as well let her pursue this journey. So I just want to reiterate that yes, my parents were supportive of the creative route, but it was not easy, and it took a lot of back and forth and a lot of fighting and slamming doors when I was a teenager. But I'm glad that they have been open to it, and sometimes things just take a little bit of time, and everyone's journey is a little different depending on their culture and who their parents are. But I just hope that if anyone's listening who is on an artistic journey, that it's beneficial for you, whether you do it as a job or something that just lights you up on the side. I just hope they hear that.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. I do want to iterate that, for me growing up, it was always this balance of how much do I, respect and how much energy and time do I put in terms of pleasing or quote unquote obligating, for my parents / culture, and how much of that, whatever is left over, do I do for myself? And so personally for me, I've always had to struggle between this. And, thankfully, and respectfully, my parents have supported me in different ways. And I, but mostly in the way that it allowed me space and time to definitely explore and pursue all these different routes, and hence, why I get to do, a podcast with all you lovely, beautiful folks. But the next question I would love to ask, especially the parents, in the room, is what would you pass on? Something cultural would you pass on, and what would you not pass on? Why or why not?
I think one thing that I really appreciate about our family and the families that I know that are South Asian in general, I think we're incredibly resourceful, when it comes to so many things. There was a time when my mom, who was a teacher back in India, came to America, went to school to study nursing, graduated as a nurse, had my sister, but was making our clothes for church. She would make our dresses for us. She made all of our food was fresh and freshly prepared at home. But she was incredibly resourceful with the food that she had, with the materials that she had, and that is something that I'm striving for in my home. When I look at sadly, when I look at my fridge sometimes and I'm like, oh man, I forgot to use this or I forgot to use that, I'm almost kind of nervous to even, I would never tell my mom. I wouldn't, I couldn't, oh my goodness, I threw this, sad vegetable away. And so that's something that I want to continue to get better at and bring that to my children, because that incredible sense of resourcefulness and finding a way to utilize any and everything, I think is so incredibly powerful and can be applied in, so many important situations. One thing I probably wouldn't pass on to them is, I think, something that ties a lot of Asian cultures together, and we touched on it earlier, is just this codependency within our families, and the struggle that I think each of us has probably felt in our own lives to break away to start setting some boundaries, to make decisions for ourselves and feeling a little bit uneasy about it because, how would our family feel? How would my parents feel? How could I do that? And feeling a little bit of guilt surrounding that because of that culture that we grew up in. And that's something that I don't want to pass on to my children. I want my children to know that, yes, they come from a loving community, a supportive family, parents who love them, but they are individuals and that they can create, whatever it is that they want. That's my goal, is to empower them to share all of our culture, but also, by doing that, also not forgetting that they are an individual, that they're a person on their own and they get to choose, they get to decide. And, I'm there to support them, no matter what that is.
CJ.
So everything that Jasmine said and more, right? I would like to, my parents instilled in me the importance of family, and just always being there for each other, and that family comes first. I think that's so important that sometimes I do see in the American culture, there is such a breakdown of the American family. And even though I think a lot of ethnic communities, they believe in that. Like, that's a wonderful thing. Like, they're to breach like a hard topic. Like, I just think that the divorce rates, you can tell me if I'm wrong, are just a lot lower in the Asian culture. And I think it's because we have instilled that you kind of fight for family, you fight to keep your marriage and your family together. And I think that's something that should be commended in the Asian culture, that I think is lacking in the American culture. So what I wouldn't take, so my family, including all my extended family, they definitely struggle with saying I love you and being affectionate. The love is there. I don't want to ever sound like I'm unappreciative of my parents. You understand where they're coming from. You know that they want the best for you. We are immigrants. I'm an immigrant, and you come here to survive, and you do what it takes. And your parents have your best interest at heart, that this is the path to do it. But definitely verbalizing it is a struggle. It's almost like uncomfortable. And so funny, I had Easter dinner here, and I was joking around with my uncle, because I guess, like, I'm an adult now. It's you can actually have this rapport. And we were all just sitting around the table, all the cousins, and we were just making fun of him. Like, go ahead, say I love you, say it right now, And he was just like, I can't do it, And it's so uncomfortable that it's almost too late. You just can't undo it at this point. But I remember growing up watching Full House, and so rest in peace, Danny Tanner. It was such a huge loss, but just seeing how there's such a strong communication between the parent and the child, and how important that is, and how that allows the child to express their feelings when they're sad, instead of just bearing it, right? Because it's such an Asian culture to not express any feelings of sorrow or failure. You just kind of, you bury it and then you move on, right? But I think it's cathartic to be able to express it, especially to the people that you love.
This is a little bit more challenging of a topic, but in light of mental health awareness and our global pandemic, we've definitely seen, and this has happened in different points in our cultural timeline, but Asian hate, Asian mental health, the discrimination against our group per se. As of 2019, there are currently 22.9 million representing the AAPI group. We make up about 7%, according to the Pew Research Center. And I just wanted to share some statistics, and this is according to StopAAPIHate.org. And they've had a national report from March 19th to 2020 to December 31st, 2021, a total of 10,905 hate incidents against Asian American and Pacific Islander persons were reported. Of that, 4,632 occurred in 2020, and 6,273 occurred in 2021. And some of the national trends, I won't go through all of them. Verbal harassment represented 63%, was the biggest shared of total incidents, and physical assault, 16.2, comprised of the second largest category. So of this, obviously, well, not obvious, I would like to kind of, maybe just kind of open up to the floor, where do you think it comes from? Obviously, the elephant in the room is a coronavirus, but do you think that there was already something brewing, underneath? What has your experiences that you observe, or, some of us, have patients and clients that might have shared their stories, with you. But, where has this been, this underlying, I guess, quote unquote, hatred and anger, kind of stems from? And how do you feel, what needs to be done moving forward to kind of, meld us and integrate us more into the tapestry of American life, or in a certain Western civilization? I open it up to the floor. I feel like I'm in the UN. Gina?
Oh, such a heavy topic. I feel like there was always a lid on it, even though people felt a certain way about different people. And one of the reasons why I think Asian hate has exploded in the past couple of years is because we did have a president who used certain words and rhetoric that made it okay to release that lid and share that in public spaces to people's faces, which led to assault and murder on the streets. And I think that, to me, that's probably one of the biggest differences. But I know that the stats you mentioned, Colin, are incorrect, because my family has been assaulted on multiple occasions and not reported it. So I'm sure there's a lot more numbers than the ones that have been reported. And I think making the Asian American experience more known and heard, and for my particular purpose to be seen on screen, helps other people realize that we're just like them. Like you see in the in People magazine, celebrities are just like us, because America is a melting pot and everyone of different cultures are here. It's just some people aren't quite used to it yet. So I think rhetoric and visibility made a huge difference.
Rashmi?
I can't quite add it any more eloquently than Gina just did, but I just wanted to say I wholeheartedly agree. My husband is white, and this is sort of what he's been saying is, look, I don't think that discrimination, that, this sense of white supremacy was ever gone. I think there was a lid on it. Which is what's really scary about this. And like you said, Gina, I mean, we had a president who used certain tones and certain words that made it okay. And I think that definitely accelerated a lot of what we see, and certainly with coronavirus. But I think just understanding that people don't understand, and having some level of empathy and compassion for that to a certain degree, and also understanding that we all have way more things in common than we do differently from each other. We're all way more alike than we are different from each other. And in fact, we're, we come from the same fabric. I mean, all sentient beings do. And having and extending that empathy and holding space for some of that, while also drawing some clear boundaries, I think is important.
Jasmine, you raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I think is another kind of uncomfortable piece of this. I think it's important to call out, South Asians in this and contributing to this, because, when it comes to Asian hate, I think that there's been certain images of East Asians that are on the screen. That's what we're seeing. And I think part of what has contributed to it is this lack of unity within the Asian culture, right? In general, I want to see more South Asians speaking up about this. I want to see more people who look like me calling attention to this. And I think sometimes within the Asian community, we do, divide ourselves as South Asian, East Asian, which is great. We're, love our own cultures, but somehow that also removes us or separates us maybe too far when it comes to standing up for others who are also within the Asian umbrella. And I think we need to be better allies. We need to be better. We need to stick our necks out more for our Asian brothers and sisters. And I think that's a contributing factor. I think I do. And I want to be better at it. And I would just encourage all of my, brown brothers and sisters to, stand up and to call it out and to name it and to share and to support, everyone within the Asian community.
Yeah, I think, personally reflecting on this, I think, a lot of times we're just not speaking up enough. I think having conversations like this, both lighthearted and also, having, uncomfortable conversations is very, very important. And I hear this a lot from, my friends and other colleagues where it's just so taboo, mental health, talking about depression and anxiety, just the angst that you feel is just not even a question that you bring on the table or, individually, voice. And in a way, it's almost like putting a lid on ourselves, what I'm saying, and not being able to just let out some steam. And I think it's super important to continue to have these, conversations as small as, an intimate gathering like this to the dinner table to hopefully more and more town halls, for example, to, more, discussions that you can see on screen, in talk shows to other different types of public discourses. But I think I think there's a lot more that we can do to kind of step up, in terms of the conversation. I think conversation is great. What other ways would you guys feel would help better advance the anti-Asian, hate and / violence, would you say? Go ahead, Rex.
Okay. So I think what we're doing in our own respective careers is actually a big way for us to combat the stereotypes that are set against us. I think a lot of the Asian hate, hate against people of color. I mean, ultimately, I think it all stems from ignorance, and I do agree with Rashmi in that, like, we have to have a space to understand that, like, sometimes people are on that wavelength, and it's going to take some time for them to sort of elevate their thinking. But from our standpoint, if you can, like, in the mind, right, you can equalize yourself with anyone. So if you can sort of show them that, knowledge-wise or even just behavior-wise, you can match them at their level, if not be better. They can't, they can try to put you down, but that you can sort of stand up to that. Obviously, I think it helps that one of the stereotypes is that we all know martial arts and that we're good at defending ourselves, So, like, part of that can be funny, but I think too, like, that's a stereotype that I don't mind having, because in a way it sort of helps protect us from some level of violence, But at another point, like, it can sort of, people want to challenge that, so they can sort of try to be like, oh, maybe you're good at kung fu, let's fight, right? But at the end of the day, like, just us being decent people and showing that, we can show kindness and empathy towards other types of people can help them accept us a little bit more.
Definitely. Jasmine, and then CJ.
I was just going to say also really quickly, it took me a long time And it is because of my upbringing. I wasn't, raised to constantly complain or to, call out every little, indiscretion. I was taught to just kind of keep the peace and, to ignore and to, just keep things moving and don't confront. That's really the messaging I got non-verbally and verbally. Don't rock the boat. And I think what we need to do is to rock the boat in every situation. I know there was a comment earlier about how, you don't necessarily have to take offense to every single comment, and which is true. But I also think that those are opportunities. It doesn't have to be aggressive, but those are opportunities for you to say, so what was funny about that? Right? That's something I recently learned, because because for me, it's really uncomfortable at times if I'm in a situation, or it used to be, for me to say anything, and I would just almost, be quiet about it and then kick myself later. And I've realized that that's not helping anybody. And so I've learned that just asking a simple question as, what did you mean by that? Why was that so funny? And asking that person to clarify if you're confronted with a joke or something uncomfortable that's said in your presence, that's one way and an opportunity for you to say, well, or for that person to realize, okay, well, maybe I didn't mean to say that, or I shouldn't have said that. But I do think that upbringing almost kind of contributes to us keeping quiet when things happen, and we have to individually break out of that and do the work for us to become comfortable calling out those situations in the ways that you feel comfortable doing, but we shouldn't ignore comments anymore.
CJ, and then Rashmi. There you go.
Oh, yes. So I agree with everything. I think that the Asian culture is often stereotyped to be very passive, and it actually comes from the fact that the culture kind of sees confrontation as you're making a scene, and it's considered unsophisticated, and so because of that, we rarely ever speak up whenever there's something that we may disagree with. We're just let live and let live kind of attitude. But in America, to make it, you almost have to demand respect. I mean, that's just the truth of it. All the entrepreneurs, you need to kind of command the room. And I think by changing that attitude, it's going to let people recognize that we are not just pushovers, because that's what people think, that we're just kind of a little bit on the dorky, nerdy side, right? And what I've learned is that there are some people who, I mean, I've lived in the middle part of America, and there are people who've never really seen an Asian person, so they're going to go by what they see on TV. But when they meet you, you are almost representing and speaking for what they don't really know. And by you interacting with them in a way that they're okay, I'm relating to you. I view you as you a person that deserves respect. You are already that moment changing the stereotype, and it's all comes down to you. Command the room.
Love it, Rashmi.
So good. Oh my God, Jessel and Connie, you're so good. I agree. I think it does have to do with some amount of passivity, but also there's this sense of complete and utter respect for all human beings at all costs in a certain way, right? Treating others as if they are divine. I mean, they are, of course, divine, but that can appear to be passive, and actually it is passive. And so just you guys were saying, command the room. And so I have a German last name. It can be, some people can confuse it for Indian, but my husband's, ancestry is from Germany. And so early on, before the interwebs, I'm 47. So when I first was attending, people would schedule an appointment with me thinking they were going to see a German man. And it was a very interesting set of circumstances then. But I learned very quickly. And I mean, there was even a time, I was really sassy when I was younger. I'm way less so now, but although Jason might disagree, but But, as far as standing up for what I believe in, I mean, I remember at one point to, in a respectful way saying, I think, sir, you should get used to seeing people who look like me, because when I graduated from medical school, which was 2000, there were 52% of us that were women, and secondarily, a great deal of us were Asian. And so, you're probably more likely to get an Asian woman as a physician next time than, an old white German man. And I'm sorry if that, comes as a shock to you. And I said it very respectfully and walked out of the room and treated him extremely well. But there is a certain level of, okay, I am the physician now, right? And so, and I can, there's a power differential, whether you like it or not. But I think it is just commanding the room. I think standing up for ourselves, and knowing that people don't necessarily have to understand, but you can still keep it very, very respectful.
So I just have a funny note before I move on to the last two questions is when I was training in after medical school, us medical residents, we go by our first name. And so my name is Irish and Celtic in origin. And so I would call down, and this was the OBGYN floor, and I was had a patient that was, in labor. Labor and delivery. And so I talked to the nurse, and, I say like, hi, my name is Colin. She woke me up at like 2 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And she'll say, oh, Miss Smith is, yada, yada, yada. And I think you should come down and check on this. And so I make my way down, and then, I go to the nurse station, and the nurse that called me, I addressed her. I was like, nurse, so what's going on with Miss Smith? And she was like, oh, I was expecting like a 6'4" Irish, red hair with freckles. And I was like, well, I'm sorry to disappoint. So that's my story with that. Guys, last two questions. We're going on a roll. And thank you so much for your time. And I love this question. And over the past at least 3 to 4 years, there's been an explosion with on-screen presence. And I know Gina would love this question. But with seeing more Asian representation in Hollywood right now over the last few years, do you see this as a good thing? Why or why not? Or not a good thing? Why or why not? And the story I shared growing up is that there was no one that I could, resonate with, because there was no one on screen. And the people that I could resonate on screen, that I could look up to, outside of my circle of friends, was pretty much people that came from overseas, when, Jackie Chan and, Jet Li, made their way into the movie industry, but, they were crossovers, right? So there wasn't any, Asian American representation. So having seen, an explosion, is this a good thing? Why or why not? And I'll leave it. I'll start with you, Gina.
To hear what everyone else has to say about this, but yeah, I think it's amazing, because I grew up loving film, but also realizing that it made a huge difference on how I valued myself. Like, the white girl gets the romantic story, the white girl gets to be the entrepreneur, she gets to be the superhero. And so it created this huge contrast between what I could be. And now we have Always Be My Maybe, like Asian rom-com, and To All the Boys I've Loved Before, to have a TV show with an Asian female lead. It makes a huge difference on the kids that watch the show, and anyone who is a person of color who can see themselves in different stories, in different positions, different careers. And when I started out, you have no idea, every single person who found out I was an actress was like, wow, you look just like Lucy Liu. You could do all the roles that Lucy Liu does. And she was the only Asian actress in America who spoke English on film. And then over the years, it's like, oh, you're like a mix between Lucy Liu and Sandra Oh. And I'm like, well, that's because those are the only two. So now there's Lucy Liu and Sandra Oh and Constance Wu to choose from out of the mix. So I'm really excited that there's a lot more Asian actor and actresses names that people can use. But sometimes I think about that. It's like if I went up to every single white person and said, you're just like Jennifer Aniston. And that's just not the case for people of color in film. So I think it makes a huge difference. And for me personally, film starts with writing the story that you create. A lot of Asian stories still have a good amount of white people in the writer's room, which I think becomes an issue in the story, and whoever directs it changes the story, whoever edits the film or TV show also changes the story. So part of the purpose of my production company is hoping to bring on more people of color who are part of the creative process that you don't only see on screen, because some of the biggest impact happens in pre-production and post-production. So I'm excited. There's a couple Asian writers groups that are happening. CAPE is a wonderful organization. So is Gold House. So I can't wait to see us just trickle in and take over the film space and change our own imagery through our own words.
Oh my God, Gina, I love it. If you ever need someone on production, I have zero experience, but lots of creativity that's unchanneled.
CJ, this is your way in. This is your way in. CJ, tell Gina, you have to hear her story about how much she wants to break into the business per se. So do it.
Well, I mean, it's always been like, even on my dental school interview, they're like, if there was something else you would want to do, what else would you do? I would be on Broadway, and they would be like, okay, that's a really odd answer, but
do you sing and dance and do theater?
I definitely enjoy it for sure, and every time I meet someone who's in the arts, I just feel like, and I did take some acting in college, and it was nice because there's certain eccentricity to like actors and actresses because they wear their emotions on their sleeve, and I'm just like, oh my God, I belong. This is,
Yeah.
Yeah. So for sure.
We totally have to connect. I'd love to share more with you and reel you into our space.
Right now, I'm having a midlife crisis.
Yeah, come to LA.
I've been telling her to come to LA. So, Rex, what are your viewpoints?
With the so my significant other is Caucasian, and with the onset of Crazy Rich Asians, Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, like just to have a male, strong male Asian leads aside from Colin Zhu.
Check will be in the mail.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it. Until I get on screen. No, just to see them on screen, it just it's nice to see that diversity. It's nice to see that representation, and I understand how important that is. Just not in an acting realm, but like I've seen young kids in the office, and they'll go, "Hey, mom, he looks like me." You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, if you want to become a doctor, you can. So, just to give them another option and to have them understand that, like, if they want to do something, they can do it. It is important. So representation does matter, and it's nice to see a little bit more of that on screen, because then, it not only brings us pride, but it also sort of normalizes having us, in these communities, and it allows other people to understand where we come from too, and shows that we're just like them, and I think that will help decrease some of this animosity that we're starting to see against us and people of color.
Yeah. And for me, like, I see this, represented more in music. I see a lot of, more DJs, more R&B singers, to novelists. The last time I stepped foot in a Barnes and Nobles, there were so many, Asian writers, novelists. It was just really nice to see. If only I could, speed read. I was like, just so much that I want to read. It's just, it just felt, really, really good. So last question, I know a lot of us had to go, but last question is if you could take a DeLorean, and for those that are too young to know what a DeLorean is, just look up Back to the Future. If you can take a DeLorean, you can go back in time to your 10-year-old self. What would you say to him or her, knowing what you have, experienced so far? And you could share, from your individual experience. You can share from a cultural perspective. What would you say to your 10-year-old self? CJ, I'll go with you first.
To my 10-year-old self, I would probably tell them that you can be anything you want to be. You don't have to be a doctor. There's plenty of Asian doctors already. I would tell them that their worth is not reflected upon like what college they go to, what the career they choose, and that their worth is, them. They are kind, and that they are, a contributing member of society.
Awesome. Gina?
I think I would say this to myself like 10 seconds ago as well, is just like, you got this, stop worrying. My 10-year-old self and my self, every second that passes, I tell my past self that. Another piece that's kind of interesting is I was very optimistic and joyful, and a big part of that people saw as being naive or like ill prepared for life. And especially learning about positive psychology, tapping into your joy is healthy and it's very powerful. And I would tell myself to lean into that more, that there doesn't need to be any shame or any sense of like holding back of enjoying the things that you enjoy.
Rex?
I would tell myself to invest in Amazon. So that I wouldn't have to pay off medical school loans. But, at the end of the day, like the experiences that you have really shapes who you are. So I don't know if I would change anything in particular. Even those mistakes you can grow and you can learn from. But I think I would give my 10-year-old self some reassurance that everything is going to be okay. And that as long as you stay true to yourself, you're going to end up all right.
Yeah. Personally, for me, I would probably tell my 10-year-old self, start loving yourself a lot earlier instead of waiting a couple of decades later to start the process. There is no limit or ceiling of how much self-care you can give towards yourself. And that, and, just trusting that life happens for you and not to you. And every life experience that you go through is part of the puzzle, of the jigsaw of how beautiful life is. You're going to meet a lot of great people. You're going to love a lot of people, and just trust that, life is happening for you. So, guys, I want to thank you so much for spending the time out, from your day, from whatever you're doing, and joining us for this special episode. Thank you to Rashmi, Jasmal, and Jason, who had previously had to go. But thank you so much. Do you guys have any closing remarks or things that you want to share before we close out?
Colin, I just want to share that you're awesome. It's great that you've curated this and brought all of us together, and for the people who hear it, so that they know that they're not alone as another Asian American or Asian person living in America. So thank you for bringing us together and organizing this.
You're very welcome.
Yes, thank you, Colin. I mean, to do what you do, and the purpose for doing all of this is really important. So it's nice that someone brave enough like you is doing that to give us a way to share our experiences, because sometimes it just takes one brave person to really get that ball rolling.
Appreciate that.
I also thank you, Colin. I've always been a big believer in having hard conversations. I think hard conversations always yields results, and thank you for bringing it to light, all these the issues that the Asian Americans experience.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us for that special episode. This is a great topic, and thank you for joining us for this session for Growing Up Asian. And we will share in the show notes when this airs different links to research, to study, in terms of Asian hate, in terms of anti-Asian hate and violence, learning about more about the Asian diaspora. And if you or you know someone else that's suffering from mental health, issues and concerns, we also have a resource for that, and specifically more in the Asian realm as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you like this, please like, follow, and subscribe. And please follow us for the latest updates for this season, season 5. And if you feel that this was a benefit for someone else, please let them know. And please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and YouTube. And thank you so much again. And we will see you on the next one.